Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we would do I think it's our sixth episode on my CD library, which is basically just going through all the CDs I have in my collection before I put them in storage because I box them all up, take them off the CD towers that they were in so I could use those towers for more movies. And they're all basically in boxes, so before I stack them in my closet, I figure I would go through them. Now this is number six, so we're into the B's, seriously into the B's now. Basically, the first box has the C's, B's, A's, and the numbers in them, right? So when you put them in the box, I started off with the beginning of my collection. You put them down so the A's and the numbers are at the bottom of the box, and then you continue to fill up the box. So we got up to like most of the C's by the time the box. So we're doing the reverse as we go in. Then we'll go to the next box and do the same thing. So we're healthily into the B's now from that box in this episode six. All right. So I thought we'd start going. All right, and we'll see what you think. So the first album is from the duo Gnarls Barkley, and this everybody knows this album is called Saint Elsewhere. I basically was listening to some music online, and the song Crazy came up, and I went, "Wow, that is a brilliant song." So I picked up the CD for it when I saw it at a thrift store, and I paid like $1 for it. So I said I'd give it a listen, and I did, and it's an all right CD. It's an all right album, but that Crazy song is just I would put it in some of the top songs that I listen to all time. Right, it's up there with all those. But the rest, and then they came out with like CeeLo and what was the name of the producer? Modest Mouse. Yeah, I think it was Modest Mouse. They came out with the second album. So this album came out in 2006, and then 2008 they came out with the second album, which was called The Odd Couple, but it didn't really chart or anything else with it. So then you haven't heard anything from them since that I can recall. But that song Crazy, an amazing song. All right, so that is Gnarls Barkley. All right. Um, Next up is a Canadian band, and they're still putting out music, even though they started like back in the early '90s. They're kind of like a pop punk, hard rock, punk style Canadian band. They came out of Toronto, Mississauga, which is like a suburb of Toronto, and they've had numerous albums, but I kind of stopped after the third one. So I listened to their first three albums, and then I went, okay, I think I've had enough of Billy Talent. All right, so um, like I said, they're amongst all the the Blink 182s and all those pop punk bands, but they have a harder, um, more fast rhythm to them, right? That some of the other pop punk bands didn't have. So I kind of got attracted to these guys, and plus they were Canadian. So this is their first album that came out in 1993, or sorry, 2003. Um, this is the one that put them on the map. All right, and then this is their second album, which is Billy Talent 2. All right. That came out in 2006, and then this is their third album, which is Billy Talent 3. All right, um, so the three albums are basically my Billy Talent collection. I think, anyways. I don't think I have any more of them. Sometimes these will get mixed up when you're putting in a box, and sometimes I'll end up doing an artist, and then the next video I do will have some more of their albums. But I think, if I remember correctly, these are the three albums that I had. But if you like pop punk, but with a harder feel, um, like The Offspring or something like that. Billy Talent's pretty good, and maybe you even heard of them already because they were quite popular, right? And they're still around today. Anyway, so that's Billy Talent. All right. Next up is a singer songwriter. I think he's from New York, but don't quote me on that. and his name is Brady Brock, and this album is called Warm American Sweater, and this is his second album. So he's kind of got that singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar playing type of guy, and he decided that this album he would do a retro feel to the album, right? So it's got that look of those 1960s LPs, right? And look at the back, and see the circle around it. That's actually put there intentionally. You'll get it at the back too. See that kind of dirty circle. That's what happens to LPs when you stack them, a bunch of them together in your however you in your crates or whatever you do with them, and over time what happens is they're squished together, and you know the case to them, or what do you call it, the record sleeve, not the record sleeve, but the record, whatever the record case is, you'll get an imprint of the vinyl record from the inside of it over time, right? So um so we decided to do that on this. So it's kind of unique, and you got a bio of Brady Brock on the back, which you see a lot in the 60s LPs, right? Can't can't believe I can't remember what the name of the, is it a sleeve? Anyway, um, so I have not listened to this. This is part you're going to hear me mention a lot in my CD library videos about this huge collection of CDs I bought off this girl. Must have been over 500 of them for around $50, and they were all like non-mainstream type of albums like this. All right, and um, basically I just put everything on a flash drive and listen to it in my car, and I have not come across this one yet in the flash drives that I've listened to yet. So I haven't listened to this one yet. If you've ever listened to Brady Brock, let me know what you think of him. All right, so that's the second album. All right, next up is a British indie electronic band. All right, and this is their third album, and the band's called Broadcast, and this is called Tender Buttons, and it came out in 2005. All right, so supposedly there was a kind of breakup of the band after their second album, and this one's kind of like a stripped down version of that band Broadcast. And I have not listened to this album yet. It's in the rotation, I guess you would say. Um, but I'm a big fan of electronic music, so but Broadcast has a good reputation as an electronics act, but not up there with some of the other albums that I've listened to in electronics that are just stunning. I don't know if this one will reach that height or not, but when I listen to it, I will. So this is Tender Buttons by Broadcast, and it came out in 2005. All right, and next up, which I've already reviewed in a previous CD library video. All right, is Broken Social Scene, and now this is Broken Social Scene's first album. And this one was the let's get a big, huge band and play a whole bunch of instruments version of Broken Social Scene, which came on their second album, which is this one. So this one came out in 2001, and this one came out in 2003. All right. Well, 2002, 2003. All right. So basically, this is a digipack. So it's in its plastic. All right. And this is the first version of their second album. This is their commercial breakthrough. This is the one that put them on the map. All right, and the reason why is they they stopped being kind of like an instrumental band with a bit of singing, which is kind of this one. It's kind of like a ambient type of album, to a full fledged band with, like, I don't know how many instruments you hear on this album, but this is the one that put them on the map. And this is the first version of it, because the popularity of this band in Toronto was such that the first printing of this album sold out before it even was released, right? So they had to do it again at like a second printing of it. And here's what the second printing looks like, and that's the one that I showed in a previous video. So I actually have two copies of this album in my collection. this cover and that cover. All right, but the music on it's the same, right? So, and what's cool about this is, and what attracted me to this was the female vocals of Feist, Leslie Feist. I don't know if you know who Leslie Feist is, but she goes by the moniker of Feist. She actually left Canada and moved to France and started putting out CDs in France. But anyways, I don't know if she's still in Paris or not. But her and Emily Haynes of the band Metric, which is one of the greatest post 2000 Canadian, pop rock type of bands out there, and they're amazing. If you haven't listened to any Metric, take a look at Metric. Here's the album that I like best by them. Okay, I'll just show an album cover here. All right, but back to Broken Social Scene, which is a collective. They're not actually a band. They're kind of like a collective of musicians in and around the Toronto area, and they all come together and they play, and they're called Broken Social Scene. There's a core group of two or three guys. Um, Kevin Drew is probably the main one, and others, right? But they always get people, joining them, and I think that according to my research, the smallest they've ever had was 6 members, and the largest was 19 members, right? If you and There was a lot of members in, let's say, this album, but the standouts were vocals of Feist and Emily Haynes, for me, anyways. And that made me go out and search for Metric and Feist, and pick up some of those albums for my collection, right? So this is their second album, and this one is their first. All right, and if you haven't picked up any Broken Social Scene and you like kind of like indie rock with not just guitar, bass, and drums in it, but like violin, mandolin, all these other instruments are fleshed into the music as well, and it comes out pretty good. Although the more simple the music is, the more I tend to like it. But Broken Social Scene does it in a way that it's pleasant to listen to, and they're one of the great post 2000 Canadian bands. So if you want to investigate Canadian music, um, Broken Social Scene is one of the bands that you should listen to, and then go through their lineup, and like Jason Collad, or Leslie Price, like I said, or Emily Haynes and her band, Metric, and others. Uh, just they're kind of offshoots of other band members that have their own solo projects or whatever, or groups that they've joined, and then you can listen to those satellite ones, and they're all good as well, right? So it's a good collection of music, post 2000, coming out of Toronto. Um, it was a golden age in Toronto. Let's put it that way. The early 2000s, right? So anyway, so that's Broken Social Scene. Next up is um, kind of like a garage rock revival band, kind of like a psychedelic rock band that came out in the early 2000s, and this is their first album. It's called BRMC, or Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. Say that 5 times fast. Rebel Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. And actually, this was the second album by them that I picked up. The first album that I found by them was their second album, which is probably their most popular album. Um, but this is their first album. Their second album, I'll just put it right here. It's in my collection, so it means that it's still in the box somewhere. I haven't come across it, but um, that was a really great album. And this one is good. It's not as great as their second album, but it is pretty good. And if you like, like garage rock, psychedelic rock, that kind of thing, in the vein of, let's say, Led Zeppelin, or I don't know, the Stooges, maybe. I'm not sure. Um, the music is very good anyway. So I got their first 2 albums, maybe their third, uh, but then I went on to other bands, right? All right. So this is called the Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. Next up is another British rock band who were huge in the 70s, but this album was by them, came out in the 90s, and it's still friggin' sold like over 1 million copies, and it's called Holy Water is by Bad Company. It came out in 1990. All right, and Bad Company, they were one of the big names in the 70s. Like Feel Like Making Love, Feel Like Making Love. Do, 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 do. Anyways, I'm not a very good singer. Um, and this I picked up just because it was Bad Company. I have not listened to it. It's in the rotation, and when I do listen to it, I'll see if I like them in the '90s, like they were in the '70s. We'll see. All right. Have you listened to this album from 1990? Let me know what you think. All right. And now we're going to go back to an album that was huge back in the early '80s. It's like a pop rock band, uh, female members, all female members. They're called the Bangles, and this is I think it's their second album. Yeah, came out in 1986. It's called Different Light. It has two of their biggest hits that you've probably heard if you've listened to, pop or retro rock or whatever uh, music stations or on Spotify or whatever. Which is Manic Monday and Walk Like an Egyptian. These guys and the Go Go's were probably the two go-to bands, and Blondie, which who came out a bit earlier, and um, but the Go Go's and the Bangles were a all-female group, right? And um, if you want something kind of along this line, but a little bit more modern sounding and a little bit more, um, well, no, they're basically very similar and catchy. Um, there's a Toronto band called, what were they called? I'll put it here. It's been a while since I've listened to their album, but it came out in like 2018, 2019. But if you like the Bengals and you like the Go Go's, and you like, let's say, Blondie, you'll probably like this band out of Toronto, and investigate them. They're a really great all female group, right? So, but this one had Manic Monday and Walk Like an Egyptian, which were all over the radio back in the mid 1980s, and they were at their peak when this album came out. So when I saw this in a thrift shop, nostalgia's sake, I'll pick it up and listen to it. All right. So if you like pop rock, female led pop rock, you'd probably like the Bangles. All right. Next up is this guy's third album. All right, and it's hard to say his name. Devendra Devendra Banhart. Devendra Banhart. It's called Rejoicing in the Hands. It's his third album, and it came out in 2004. And basically, I've not listened to this album, but I mean, he's put out a very large collection of music in different genres, but I guess the central core is like folk music. So it's kind of like singer-songwriter folk music. If you like that, maybe you'll like him. Maybe you can tell me, what do you think of this guy if you've listened to him? Um, I have not listened to him yet. It was in that collection of 500 CDs that I bought off that girl for like $50. This was one of them, and for some reason, it's not in a. It's a digipack, so it's all paper, and it's going to get wrecked. Uh, so I better put it in a plastic bag to protect it. All right. So there you go. Now it'll stay new. All right. Next up is Andrew Bird and the Mysterious Production of Eggs, which is his third solo album. He's been in a few bands or whatever. I have not listened to this album. This is becoming a theme of this. I'm going to have more CDs in my collection that I haven't listened to than I have listened to because of that purchase that I made from that girl, like 500 CDs, of which none of them I've listened to. It's all post 2000, more obscure music, or indie or folk, or out of the ordinary stuff. She had a really eclectic taste in music, right? and most of it was post 2000. I said, well, I don't know a huge amount of like, especially from 2010 to today. I don't know any of that music, very little of it, right? So I said, I'll pick this up and I'll get a refresher course of it as I listen, go through my flash drives as I listen to them in my car. I'll get a more modern uh, variety of albums, post 2000 albums, post 2010. But this one came out in 2005, and it's called Andrew Bird and the Mysterious Production of Eggs. All right, and it's basically his third album, and that's pretty much all I know about this. Have you listened to this album? What do you think of this album? One of the greats, or what? All right. Next up is one of my all-time favorite female singers. All right. So if you go through the list of female singers, all right, in the last, say, 30 years, well, let's say the 1980s up until now. So the last 40, 50 years, she is one. And I know I have even more of her CDs, but right here is five of her CDs. All right, and this is the Icelandic singer called Bjork. All right. Now, if you're talking about who has the greatest voice in popular music, in the history of popular music, I mean, some names will come up. My personal favorite out of all of them is Sinead O'Connor. She just has a voice that just gives me shivers down my spine. But you'll have like Celine Dion is another one, Canadian Celine Dion. You'll have Whitney Houston, who's another one. All right, and you'll have Bjork, Bjork, her. All right, so her. All right, and her music is kind of electronica, but it's avant-garde stuff. It's strange music. All right, and it's never the same twice. I mean, her first two albums, which are my favorite, which is um, I think it's just Bjork, her first album, and then her second album is called Post, if I remember correctly, which is here, which is this one, Post. I have her first album, but it's probably still in the box, and I'll get to it in the next 20 I pull out maybe. But this is Post. This is her second album. Her first and her second album are my personal favorites. Um, but she has an extremely good voice. All right, and she's up there with the greatest vocal artists of all time. Up there, anyone you name, she's up there with them. Now, like I said, my personal favorite is Sinead O'Connor, but Bjork is like up there really close as well. The issue with Bjork, if there is any issue, is that you need to have an open mind when you listen to her music because her music is so off the wall. It's like it's nothing that you've listened to before. All right, she has like a weird sense of timing and the signatures in her music is just off kilter. You know what I mean? So and then she kind of goes between genres that aren't even genres in her music. So if you like eclectic music, maybe even quote unquote a bit strange music, you will enjoy Bjork because one thing you can't fault is her voice. All right, and so this is her second album. This is called Post. All right. Um, which one is this one? This one is Utopia, which is one of her latest. Came out in 2013. All right, and it's a digipack, so I put it in a plastic bag. All right. This one is called Telegram. All right. So Telegram came out in 1996. All right. And this one is Homogenic. Yeah. Homogenic. All right. And this one came out in 1997, and it's her third. All right. It's her third album. And this one is, I think this one is called Medulla. This is Medulla, and this is her fifth album. Came out in 2004. All right. And this is Selma Songs. I left this one for last on purpose because this one came out in 2000. This is a soundtrack of a film that she was in, a Lars von Trier film, which was called, what was it called? Yeah, Dancer in the Dark. I had to look. All right. So this is a very strange soundtrack album as well. And the film is is one depressing film. All right, and Lars von Trier is an amazing director, and her acting is very subtle in it, but it's it's the weirdest musical that you could ever watch, if you could even call it a musical. But people sing in it, so um, it's an amazing film if you haven't seen Dancer in the Dark. And this is an amazing soundtrack from it. It's called Selma songs. She plays Selma in the film, right? And this is her songs that you will hear in the film, right? So, but if I was to uh, suggest what you would listen to for Bjork, try her first two albums, um, and uh, and see what you think of her, and concentrate on her voice, because the music in her first two albums are kind of electronic based music, and her later stuff just goes friggin' wild after that, and it's not similar to her first two albums. So when I listen to Bjork, I listen to her first two albums, so I got a kind of feel of that after listening to them, dozens of times. And then when I moved on to her other albums, they kind of threw me for a loop a bit. You'd have to get used to them. But one thing that always keeps coming back to Bjork is her voice, and the interesting way that she sings with her voice, because she's not a typical singer when she sings either, right? So, um, anyways, try her out. Maybe she'll be of your taste, and maybe she won't. But I know I have more of her albums than this, but these are six of her albums, all right, in my collection. So obviously I collect her, right? So that's Bjork, and I think that is everything. All right. So Bjork was the last. And so I hope you like this video. Let me know what you think of Andrew Bird, if you've listened to him or him. Um, I keep having a difficult time with Devendra Barnhart. These two guys. I'm kind of excited to listen to this one, and I'll see if I like them or not. But give me a suggestion. What do you think of them? And this Brady Brock guy. Have you ever listened to Brady Brock? I have not. So anyway, so that's episode 6 of my CD library, and look forward to episode 7 in the near future. If you like this video, just give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you so choose. I will talk to you in the next video. All right. And you have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.